This episode of ArchiSpeak is supported by NCARB. You have the power to influence the future of how architects are educated, trained, and licensed. Take the Analysis of Practice survey today. So, good trip? Good time off? Did you get away? Did you?
So there's this thing that I keep hearing people talk about. It's weird because I've just been
foreign. Is it a foreign concept?
I think it's even a foreign word. Have you ever heard of this before? Oh, I don't even know if I know how to pronounce it right. Weekend? Am I pronouncing it right?
That right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, meanwhile, a supervisor is somewhere saying you're doing it wrong.
Yeah, I know, right? But oh my God, with this project and the demands and everything else that, I don't need to necessarily beleaguer the whole conversation with. It's just been really kind of like, if I'm going to use the big massive air quotes here, time off. Most of the time it's been just like, okay, I'm exhausted. I'm going to go crash and lay in bed and barely move.
But yeah, as long as you don't leave the premises, you keep that GPS tracker turned on.
Exactly.
You'll be fine.
My computer's low jacked.
Right.
I walk, a few feet away from the computer. And it's like, exactly. All right, fine. I'll come back.
You need one of those portable green screen setups like that guy who goes to the football games and stuff with
that's awesome.
His Zoom thing going. Yeah.
I loved that. That's just tremendous. Come on now.
It's a good meme.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on there to make that happen, but pretty successful.
So I knew that you were going out and getting away, and it's a tad bit of jealousy. So I was like, I'm not on my watch. He's not going to go out on his own.
He doesn't get to do this by himself.
I'm going to take some time off too. And so it sounds so weird to say it out loud that it's just like,
you feel a little bit of shame and embarrassment for actually taking time off.
No, I feel shame and embarrassment for not taking time off. So anyway, so with the bit of jealousy of like Evan's getting outside and enjoying sunlight and all of that other stuff, that I should do the same.
I should. Hey, wait, I should do that.
Yeah, no, and I decided that I was going to surprise my wife and daughter with a Valentine's Day gift.
Oh, how cute.
I am still one of those people who do that.
Wow.
Surprise my wife with a Valentine's Day gift. And it was more actually a surprise to my daughter. We decided to just get away. It was only a day trip, but it was a day trip, which, I will say one thing about living on the East Coast, and we've talked about this before, but I'm always like so surprised at like how close things really are.
Mm-hmm.
In Florida, you drive 3 hours.
I don't think you are allowed to be surprised at that. I would be surprised at that.
Well,
because everything is very far from me.
Okay.
Very far, but
so growing up in Florida, you drive 3 miles or three hours. Guess what? You're still in Florida. It's in Central Florida where I was at. You're driving. You're still in. You are like you're landlocked for one thing, and if you're driving, and if you're in like Southern Florida or Central Florida, 3 hours does not get you out of the state, and so that's sort of what I kind of always just felt. It's just like, wow, everything's so far away. Oh, I need to go to. Like I remember when we had moved to Florida and we'd travel back to Michigan to visit family, and it felt like it was just like years away, and so 3 hours away gets us all sorts of different places: Virginia, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, you name it. But the place that we decided to go was New York City. What was even great about it was that we went to a Broadway play.
Nice.
A Broadway
Never
play.
done that. That's cool.
Never. So, we've seen plays before, but we've never actually seen Broadway plays.
Mm-hmm.
And,
So what'd you see?
So we saw what my daughter has been wanting to see for quite some time. Has seen it on Disney Plus, I feel, hundreds of times. Listened to the soundtrack, I feel, hundreds of times.
Okay.
Can you figure out where I'm going with that?
I can. I think I can.
A little bit of history trip.
Okay.
Saw Hamilton, and it was
history in a big city.
Oh
That's
my
cool.
Lord. It was amazing. I mean, it wasn't the original cast. It's the new cast. And it's amazing to, it was in this beautiful theater, it's renamed the Richard Rodgers Theater on Broadway, beautiful historic building. I'll get into the architecture part of it in a second, but when you're actually in the theater, it's, a triple tiered theater, but it feels you're like so close to the stage. And of course we bought our tickets like at the last minute. So, we were one row from the back wall, but being one row from the back wall, funny enough, was just as good. Well, okay. It's a little hyperbole there, but
yeah,
it wasn't as good as being in the front row, but it was still pretty good because like
there was no bad seats.
Well, there was no bad seats, and there were no heads in our way. And so we were,
the rake is so high.
Yeah, the rake is high, and we're up there high, and you could feel the reverberation, in the sound system, and
that's cool.
These just amazing voices and these amazing talents of these actors on stage. I mean, it would have been great to actually be able to see what their faces looked like, but
you turn on the zoom on the camera.
Oh no.
You're not allowed to do no photography.
Yeah. No photography, no digital recording, no nothing. And
right.
If you even are remotely seen, in fact, actually, not only there was a guy walking around, one, making sure that you were always wearing your mask, and two, making sure that you weren't doing any digital photography or any kind of recording or anything. And I actually had witnessed a group of people in the audience actually bust another person in the audience. And it was so hush hush. It was like
public shaming,
but they got publicly tossed out.
Oh, wow. Boom. Done. Bouncers. Everyone's a bouncer now.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah. I think that's, it's, I had this feeling that it was just this is what kind of culture of online shaming that we do.
Cancel culture.
Yeah. Has it's jumped out and taken to the streets, where it's just they said that you weren't supposed to do any digital photography, and you're out there doing digital photography. You have been served, and it gets tossed out.
Yeah. Jeez.
You're like, come on now. I mean, they just wanted to take it. In fact, it was just, they literally just took a picture,
Yeah.
And so it was, but anyway, that didn't diminish from the fact that it was an absolutely amazing performance. And as many times as I've seen it on Disney Plus, because especially during the summertime when my daughter was not at school and just decided to watch TV all the time because you really couldn't go very many places, it was, I have pretty much the entire soundtrack stuck in my head.
I bet.
And even though there was the slight variations, it was just where do they find these people? Their voices are so powerful. They're the guy who played George Washington. I mean, if you didn't get chills, if you weren't moved by the power of this man's voice, you're either asleep or dead inside, or dead inside while you're sleeping.
It's good to hear, though, that you're not either one of those.
Oh my gosh,
sitting at the desk as much as you do.
I'll tell you what. I mean, some of their performance were help me out here. I might tear up a little.
Yeah.
I'm not crying.
Cool,
you're
man.
crying.
I'm not.
And so I was just okay, this is to. I'll be absolutely honest. I've never really been into musicals, and I've never really been to a musical. But this one, if this is what musicals are on Broadway, won't be my last.
You could do some more. Yeah. That's cool, man. I'm excited that you got to do that.
I'm not sure I'm built for Jersey Boys, but I'm sure I could find another one.
There's so many.
No offense, Jersey Boy fans, because I'm sure it's fine.
So we do have some of that here. I think I saw Les Miserables in LA. Vegas has some amazing Cirque du Soleil shows, and that the theatricality of it, and the performance and the timing, and there's so much that goes into that is just, as an architect, it's very interesting to watch how all of the mechanics work in addition to the performances. Obviously, it's all about the performances, but there's kind of this other layer of stuff that's going on. And people who have been into theater for their whole lives know exactly what I'm talking about. There's this front of house, back of house kind of concert going on all the time. And I think that's what was so fun about working on a performing arts building that I did for one of the high schools down here. And it was not a high school level theater. I mean, they spent a lot of money on this theater. And it was incredible to be involved in, designing the rigging and the lighting and the catwalks and to support all of that stuff that happens back of house, and the scene shop and the way that they can move stuff on and off the stage. And they've got the surround, and there's just so many neat things about theater to make it about the performance that has to happen functionally for the architecture to make that happen. It's really cool.
So the amazing thing about this, so again, this was a just shy of 100-year-old theater, and to talk about like the front of house spaces, like the lobby and kind of like the flow in and out of the building and stuff, definitely is something that you're like, yes, this is a 100-year-old building, because they did not take into account like this massive kind of like crowds moving in and out, and during like intermission, everybody wants to like get up because these seats are so small. And like, here I am just shy of 6'2", and I'm sitting in these seats and my knees are kind of like hanging over the seat in front of me. And I'm like, I really hope a tall person doesn't come and sit in front of me, not because they'd be blocking my view, but they'd have my knees in the back of their head.
Because they have nowhere to go.
Because they have absolutely nowhere to go. And so, like, obviously, that part of it is just showing its age. Okay, fine. But what was interesting about it, though, is I'm sitting there and I'm watching the choreography, not just the choreography of the actual performance, but the choreography of them moving the set around, because it's a fixed set. So there's like there's three. It's basically like the three walls that kind of like take place throughout the history of like Hamilton coming to, spoiler alert, Hamilton coming to the U.S. and then his rise to fame in the political system, in the fight for independence, and all of these other things. And then ultimately, big spoiler alert, him getting shot and dying. And so
I don't know if that's a spoiler anymore.
It might be. Some
US
people
history.
may not know. But
Yeah, maybe.
But what was amazing
the play and the history, they're kind of tied together.
Yeah. But what was amazing about it is sitting there watching the choreography of them moving around certain pieces of the set that just flow with not only the choreography of the actual performance, but when the lights go down and they like are showing just like, spotlighting one particular person, and you can, and I can see,
you see a little movement going on everywhere around them.
But it's just like so like beautifully done that maybe not an architect, but somebody who's architecturally minded worked on that set. And I know a lot of set designers who used to actually be or had gone to architecture school and then later pursued a career in set design. And so I know that they're architecturally minded. And just to see how things are like beautifully, just like things interlock and all this other stuff. I mean, it was just but to look at the way that the design of the theater, and obviously it's been updated because now they have like, catwalk systems and stuff that are kind of like hanging down below this beautifully plastered, ornate, ceilings. So it's been modernized, but, to just kind of like really see the way that like the acoustics play out. I mean, we're designing it started off as a true theater. and then the program kind of like tapered down, and then they thought it was just going to be like an amphitheater, and then they started talking about the things that would they envision happening in this auditorium, and now the auditorium has become a theater light. So I would say it's probably on par with maybe like around what you did for that high school, because it was a performing arts high school, right? Or a performing arts level auditorium or theater, right? Yeah. I mean, I remember you sending me pictures of it, and it was just like you were just like, and this is a high school. I'm like, wait, what? I've designed some high schools with some auditoriums, and we didn't do that.
Yeah, it had a balcony. It had everything.
Oh, it was just amazing. And so this is going to be, something very similar to that, where dignitaries and things like that will be. And so, but, it's just to like see all of the different intricacies that go into it. I think you and I were talking a little bit earlier before we really started rolling about how so many different trades go into the design of certain rooms. And in the case of like this one, we've got a acoustician, we've got our mechanical, we've got our structural engineers, we've got our theater designers, we have the architects, and we have the interior designers and all of these other people. So now I have like, what did I list out? 7?
Yeah,
at least 7. At least 7, but that's not
structural.
Like
is huge. Yeah,
yeah, but that's not even like all of them. I mean, like I've lumped MEP together, but there's like you can expand that out to even further ones, and then just like thinking about the systems that pass through here and how you have to control sound and noise and everything else through like your simple systems and things like that are way above and beyond the thoughts that you would normally do.
Let's take a quick break to share more about our sponsors. NCARB's analysis of practice study is your opportunity to shape the future of architecture. Participate in this industry-wide survey to share your experiences and insights from working in architecture, engineering, or construction. Your feedback will help guide changes to what being a licensed architect looks like and impact how architects collaborate with other professionals in the future. Whether you're an architect or you work with architects, NCARB wants to hear from you. Make sure your voice is heard. Contribute to the analysis of practice study today. Sign up at ncarb.org/AOP. And now let's get back to our conversation.
When just thinking about the HVAC and the level of that it can, kind of the problems that it can introduce in the acoustics in the room.
Yeah.
And having to extend duct runs to lower the velocity of the air moving through there so that it wouldn't cause any problems, like things like that
get the
invisible to the people who are there for the performance, but are all contributing to that theatrical experience.
Because I had noticed, I'd looked up, and I could, clearly this theater was designed way before modern HVAC, but I look up and I could see that registers were cut into the ceiling and, cut into this, beautifully ornate plaster and stuff. But then interestingly, like decorated so that, they kind of blended in.
Kind of blend,
But you look at them and it wasn't like the most professional of jobs of cutting it all in, but
they're running on a shoestring budget.
Oh, I'm absolutely sure. But I mean, it was just amazing to think about that. But then think about like, okay, so here they are retrofitting this old 100-year-old theater, and this old 100-year-old theater is performing like a modern theater.
Yeah, and to think about a show that moves around, doesn't sound like this one does, but the ones that do, it's pretty incredible to have to adapt.
They're not changing sets out, so there's one fixed set that they like really use. I mean, the show itself, so there is a turntable. Well, actually, there's 2 turntables in the middle. Yes, and a microphone. Oh.
All right. That's a reference, folks.
Exactly. But there's 2 turntables in the middle. So there's like, one inner circle and then an outer circle that like can either go the same direction or go in opposite directions and all this other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so like the choreography of like, you know, and I'm like looking at like all of the marks that they like tape on the floor and everything else. And,
Yeah.
you know, and it's just like,
You can only see those from the crappy seats.
you literally can only see them from, you know, one row from the wall, from the back wall.
Yeah. I mean, that brings up another thing when you're designing in like these spaces in section, and you look at the line of sight for people and the row spacing and the number of seats from the aisle that you can do for code. And like, there's just so much that goes into an assembly space like a theater that you're just bringing back all these memories.
I mean, you know, when we really, you know, fully got, because we had just started to design an auditorium. And then as the program started to change again, we're like, oh, you know, we really need to have a theater consultant come in. And so we had the theater consultant come in, and they started to overlay all of the rules and regulations and just what makes a real performance arts center, you know, work properly. And so, you know, they had started to come in and say, well, you need to lower your balcony half a meter because because the view angles that you need for this.
Mm-hmm.
And right now you're up a full meter higher than you need to be. You can we really want you to bring it down the full meter, but we understand that lower ceilings and everything else on the spaces below, and plus running any kind of HVAC within those plenums would be completely eradicated. Right. And so we kind of like found that sweet spot of the middle, but then it also said, okay, then what we need to do is we need to reconfigure the stage like this, and we need to do this. And these are things that I guess, like, I don't want to be offensive, but out of the box architects don't really know, you know?
Yeah.
And you need those subject matter experts.
You can't know everything about everything, right?
Exactly.
Like there are specialty spaces that need specialty people. That's all they think about.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. That when it comes to like, how much space do you need for rigging? Who draws all that? Like, it has to all be drawn. It's the grid above the fly loft and how it's attached to the loft and how the rigging runs past that, and how does that interface with the curtain? And oh my gosh, there's so many things that go into that.
Yeah. I mean, right now we've been going through kind of a redesign of the green room because we had like a green closet and not really a green room.
Yeah.
And so we've been trying to carve out some more space because, you know, I mean, once you have a fixed borders, you know, like if you're built up to the property line, which we are, you don't have, you've just got to get very creative.
Yeah, you start fighting for inches for everything. And we had an orchestra pit in ours, and you know, there was a temporary framework that would go in there to hold up the stage when they didn't want the orchestra pit, and you want to get HVAC down in there because the orchestra can't cook while they're performing, and all of these things. And then and access. I think circulation is such an interesting part of the theater design process because you need the stage to be accessible. You need the mezzanine balcony area to be accessible. You need everything to be accessible. Even your control booth in the back of the theater is elevated so that you're above all the people in the room, and that's another type of accessibility. And having all the clearances for all of these different things, and how many steps people can go up and down, and is there going to be a guardrail on the front of the balcony? What's the guardrail made out of so that people can see through it? And like, I'm sure it's different in a high school environment than a professional environment. Like, there's all of these things that it is layers upon layers of complexity. It's a really fun design challenge. That's the kind of thing where it's like, what are we going to do today? And it's like, for the next 2 weeks, you're going to learn all about the proscenium. And it's like, what's a proscenium?
Yeah. I was going to say, you know, I don't remember learning the word proscenium in school, but sure do know about it now. Well,
yeah,
I mean,
right.
I've known about it for a while, but
what's so interesting is even the acoustics. I can't these clouds, they call them, in the ceiling, you know, that and they're arched or angled in different ways. And what's so interesting to me is I always thought that they kind of aimed toward what's happening on the stage or away from it. Like, I wasn't really sure which direction, because it's like, you know, they're there. You go into theaters and you see them, but you don't really think about invisible sound waves and what they're doing when they hit those, and how they're designed especially up at the proscenium, to project audio out of the stage environment into the audience. And then you get to the back of the room and you're thinking about, okay, now how do we trap it there? Like, we don't want it bouncing back toward the stage anymore. So there's all of these acoustic baffles that are up on the ceiling and on the back wall so that they absorb the sound once it gets there. Because especially if you are towards those back rows, you don't want to hear the performance twice with a slight delay. All of those things come in, and like acoustic modeling has to happen. And it's insane the amount of coordination that has to happen in a theater. It's so cool.
I don't know though. I mean, Hamilton was pretty good, so I wouldn't mind hearing it twice.
In short succession.
Exactly.
What?
Well, they spoke like that, didn't they?
Yeah.
I'll give you what?
Do I repeat myself? Well, I had the exact opposite environment, I think, on my getaway. I was out in the middle of Death Valley, and there was nothing like what you're talking about there.
No, I remember I sent you a photograph of Times Square all lit up, wide angle and everything else. And it was just like everything was kind of like coming in on you. And you literally are just the opposite.
Yeah. It's like, here's a picture of a ghost town. It's interesting to think about how different of a place we were in at the same time. And I was even just lucky to have cell service at that point. Right? So it doesn't exist out there in a lot of places. So kind of interesting to think about. But yeah, what a fantastic getaway. Like, just I for both of us, it was really good to just get away from the chair and the desk and the computer and do something.
Well, what was interesting is that the image that you sent of, and I really want to learn more about that, because I dig the ruins of the ghost town that you were at, and like the masonry building that you taken some pictures of that literally was like the opposite. Like, here is like the urban environment at its like most dense, and then here you are with just like these remnants of a forgotten land that is no more.
And yeah, so we were in Beatty, which is in Nevada, and it's a ghost town, and it's managed by the BLM. What is that? Bureau of Land Management. And it was just this once thriving town, because when you're there, they do have some signs up, and there's only a handful of buildings, but in its heyday, there was more than 10,000 people there, and it was thriving. I mean, it was all about the mining community and, the promise of whatever they were mining out there, and people coming out there just in droves, first they started off laying a mile of railroad track per day to get there, and they finished off, but they were laying 2 miles of track per day to get there and to bring the train in, which was after the town had already been pretty much thriving, to have the train come in. And this was like 1906. And by 1910, the town was dead, which is incredible to think about, especially a town that big and with so many buildings. There actually were photographs.
Was it built specifically for, as like a railroad town, as in like a place for people to stay while the railroad was being built, or
it was a destination? It was like the end of the line. And it was because everybody thought that this town was just going to be the boom town. It was going to be the next big thing. And it just turned out not to be. And more people were leaving than were showing up at some point. And then pretty soon, like, it got down to like 12 people in the very last days of this town, which is just incredible to think about. And so, yeah, there are some unreinforced masonry buildings that are mostly toppled over now that you can get close to. Some of them you can walk into, but most of them, they keep you out with fencing and stuff. There's this incredible bottle house there that's made out of like 50,000 glass bottles, and I guess it's been pretty popular in different movies and things like that. A lot of movie stuff has been filmed out there. I think my wife's mentioned something about it being in the island with I think that was Ewan McGregor. One of those places that just disappeared off the map, and now it's it's barely a thing at all, and it's out in the middle of nowhere, literally, right? Like this is the kind of thing you think of when you're out in the middle of what the middle of nowhere looks like. It's that kind of place. Yeah, like I said, couldn't be any different than New York City, but also just to kind of read about the transformation that it went through and how fast it went up and down is pretty incredible to think about. Not just architecturally, but just as a culture and a community and things like that. So really cool. And that was just one of the stops we did. We were in the park, and we drove a lot. We actually drove to the racetrack, which is a pretty famous destination in the kind of northern part of the park, which we had not been to before, which the racetrack refers to, I wasn't aware of this, but the shape of the dry lake bed, not the actual phenomena, which people go there to see, which is these rocks that are maybe the size of 2 or 3 shoeboxes that appear to have they have these paths behind them. And so it looks like these rocks are kind of like peeling out or something on the dry lake bed. But the phenomena is so that nobody can really understand how this happens, or they couldn't until they solved it. I think they said that they solved it in 2014. So they've known about this place for a long time. And scientists would go out and study it and try to figure out, how in the heck are these rocks moving? Is it just the wind? Like, what's going on? And it turns out that, I guess, this dry lake bed, it takes perfect conditions for this to happen, but it has to rain, which it rarely does out there. It has to fill the dry lake bed with a few inches of rain, which then has to freeze. The rocks get captured in the ice, and then the wind has to blow. So another, thing has to happen so hard that it's busting up the ice, and it's sliding on layers of ice below it, or I don't know what, but it's kind of basically lifting these rocks and then pushing them along with 70 or 80 mile an hour winds very slowly, and leaving these paths behind these rocks. And then it all evaporates and dries up and goes away. And then people show up, and you see these rocks with tracks behind them, like they've been slowly pushed across the dry lake bed. And so it's pretty cool. I'll try to remember to put some pictures of this in the show notes. But if you just look it up on Google, just Google Death Valley Racetrack, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Very interesting place and it takes so long to get out there, because it's like 30 miles of washboard dirt roads, which you can't go very fast on. And so it's just way the heck out there, and there's no services, no facilities, nothing. You're just on your own, way the heck out in the middle of nowhere again. That was probably the highlight, though, for me, because it was, like I said in the last episode, been going out to Death Valley my whole life and never had made it to the racetrack or to Beatty. So it was kind of fun to see some new things that never experienced before.
I can confirm that your wife is correct, that area, that ghost town, is featured in the movie The Island with Ewan McGregor. And I guess they were looking for a slightly more contemporary place of ruins, and also in Detroit.
Oh, speaking of ruins.
Hey now.
Jeez.
Maybe at the time, but it is definitely becoming a different place, Detroit, as well as the constant decay of Death Valley.
So anyway, that was my trip for the most part. It was fantastic to get away. I spent a lot of time driving, a lot of time in the car. I put 1,000 miles on my trip, so it was just
wow. And that was just what, 3 days, 4 days?
Yeah, 3 days. So
yeah, sounds very familiar.
Yeah, it's like great.
Short burn, a lot of mileage type, trips.
Yeah. I think that the worst part about that is just the seat time in the car. But the best thing about it is getting out and seeing something new. And I think, we've talked about that on the show a lot before. And I think it applies to both of the things that we experienced over the weekend in very different ways. But the type of perspective it gives you as an architect to think about these things and all these different layers and levels and interconnectedness and even the contrast between these two things, and having a conversation about it, to me, makes for a richer design possibilities. That to me is, if you are so stuck in the echo chamber of architecture and the one project, and then what's the next project, and then what's the next project, and you never step away and get these other kinds of experiences, you are worse off for that. Like, you can't get it all from scrolling through Arc Daily or flipping through Dwell. You just can't do that.
No, I'm a firm believer of like physical, like spatial experience. I mean, you can't learn about your 3D world in a 2D environment.
Right. Totally. Yeah. That's a perfect place to end it. And that, kids, is one to grow on.
Thanks to NCARB for their support of this podcast episode. Visit ncarb.org/AOP and contribute to the Analysis of Practice survey today. Thanks for listening. This show is part of the Gable Media Podcast Network. See all the shows at gablemedia.com. That's GABLMEDIA.com. You can help support what we're doing here by leaving a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts to help get the word out, and don't forget to share it with your friends. We'd love to hear from you, so leave a comment on the website at archispeakpodcast.com, where you can find our entire catalog of shows. Talk to you soon.